All right, you know what? I think we're ready to get started. So, let's do this. All right, hey everyone, my name is Nisala, and thank you for coming to the Computers and Ethics Workshop. Today, what we're going to be talking about is just ethical reasoning in computer science. We're going to be talking about some different examples. We're going to be talking about what it means to be ethical in computer science. So, computer science is a really powerful tool, right? You can do a lot of different, really cool things with it, right? I mean, that's kind of the concept of a hackathon, right? You do a lot of really interesting things with computer science. But with that comes a lot of danger, right? Because CS can be used for good, certainly, but can also be used for evil. And I think a lot of people in computer science, they ask the question, okay, can we do this? Can we make this program? Can we create this service? And I think a lot of times they don't ask, should we? It's a really big problem. So today we're going to be talking about a couple big areas in computer science that have this issue, some of the problems that you guys might run into, and what you do, what you want to do as an ethical computer scientist, you know, how you want to be more ethical and how you want to handle these real world problems in this industry that has so much power and so much responsibility. So we're going to start by talking about social media. So obviously, if you know anything about social media companies, you probably know there are a lot of ethical issues in this field. And there's one big company that stands out above the rest. And it's the one that we're going to be talking about the most.
Shout it out.
Facebook.
Yes.
Hell yeah, we're going to be talking about Facebook. And we're going to start by talking about different ethical issues in Facebook. And for those of you guys who don't know, Facebook owns a lot of companies. So the primary two that we're going to be talking about are Facebook and Instagram, since those are the big social media companies that they own. And obviously, a lot of these problems are generalized across social media companies, right? It's not just Facebook that has these issues, but they've really taken a lot of these ethical standards to the extreme. And so we're going to be talking about a couple case studies. We're going to be talking about what this company has done and the different ethical issues that they've posed. So we're going to start with a little bit of discussion real quick. There is Candy. What ethical issues have you heard of at Facebook? Yeah, Kari. Yeah, okay, those are good. Yeah. We have good candy, by the way. There's like Swedish Fish, Sour Patch Kids. We've got good stuff. Anyone got any other answers? Yeah, Ben. Hey, that's a good one. We're going to hear about that one pretty soon here. Here, have your head. Anyone else? It's okay, it's pretty early in the morning. I'll give you guys some time to warm up. Yeah, Casey.
They just have that thing where their servers went really down, and that's probably related to data leaks.
Maybe. I guess we'll see. We don't know yet. But we're going to be talking about three big issues with Facebook. We're going to talk about three main ethical areas here. So we've got experimentation, toxicity, and algorithmic effects. So we're going to start by talking about experimentation. And with experimentation, we're going to start off easy. And it's going to be hard to believe that when you see what we're going to be talking about. But this is experimentation that Facebook has told us about. So experimentation that we know because Facebook told us that they've been doing on their users. Now there's a variety of different experiments on different things that Facebook has done in terms of user research. There's one study that really stands out above all. And it's this one study where Facebook took almost 1 million different Facebook accounts. And basically what they did is they looked at people's feeds and they said, okay, if we make a person's feed more positive, so if we do keyword analysis, right? We say, okay, we want people's Facebook feeds to be more positive or more negative. So what they do is they made certain people's feeds, let's say 500,000 people's feeds, more positive by increasing positive keywords or posts with positive keywords. And then they made the other half more negative by emphasizing posts that had more negative keywords. They did this without telling users, so it's a blind study. And what happened was when people were given a more positive feed, right? So when they were presented with more positive posts, they tended to post more positive things. And this effect lasted not just while they were seeing this positive feed, but days after Facebook turned off that information. So days after they turned off this experiment, they could still see that people who saw more positive posts for that one day they were more positive for days after. And that also went for the people who were negative, right? People who were showed more and more negative posts posted more and more negative things for several days after the experiment was over. So just hearing that, maybe, nope, sorry, my bad. What's the ethical issue here? Let's just start there. Nice and simple. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. I guess it's like, yeah, like you're people that they didn't sign up for it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like somewhere hidden under like page 37 in the TOS.
I'm sure it is,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. Yeah. They were experimenting on people without their consent. And what's really dangerous about something like this, right, is that they made people sad. They made people more negative by changing their feeds, and that effect lasted for days. What you have to understand, right, is let's say one of those 500,000 people, let's say that they were severely depressed, say they were suicidal. This study might have killed someone. In fact, statistically, probably did kill someone. That's really dangerous. And this is the sort of thing that you have to understand with computer science, right? Some data scientists are probably like, look, we can change people's feeds and we can see how that affects them. Okay. So what? And this is the type of stuff that happens, right? You have to understand when you're messing with actual people, you're playing with people's actual emotions, you real harms to that. And we're going to be seeing that more and more as we talk more about experimentation of Facebook. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is toxicity. So I want to give a content warning here real quick. So we will be talking very generally, statistics-wise, about suicide, self-harm, and body image in a couple minutes. So in the next couple minutes, if you're not comfortable hearing those things, you can step outside, take a drink of water. Won't last too long. But we're going to be talking about how this platform hurts people. Really. We hear anecdotes all the time about Facebook and Instagram. We're mainly going to be talking about Instagram here, about how they affect people, right? You certainly see this in schools, right? Like, with, people's friends, right? They're like, oh, like, Instagram really hurt me. I have an unhealthy relationship with Instagram. I have an unhealthy relationship with Facebook. You hear these things, right? They're anecdotal. And sure, you hear these anecdotes from different places, but what a lot of people don't realize is that these effects are far more widespread than you might imagine. And what's really dangerous is Facebook knows. They know the impact that they're having on people, and they're not doing anything about it. There's a great, if you guys have been following the news the last couple of weeks, there's been this great leak that came out a couple of weeks ago. It's called the Facebook Files. It's a great investigation by the Wall Street Journal, where they basically went in, they got this big data leak from Facebook that basically shows a bunch of different ethical issues at Facebook, a bunch of different ethical research that they've done there that shows that they know how harmful their platform is to people and that they're doing nothing about it. So let's talk about some of the things that study's found, because it's really disturbing. 26% of teenagers who feel inadequate or have feelings of inadequacy, those feelings started on Instagram. 26% of teenagers. 1 in 3 teenage girls who use Instagram have body image issues because of the app. And it gets worse. 8% of all teenage self-harm starts because of Instagram. And 10% of suicidal ideation within teenagers starts on Instagram because of it. Now you might be saying, okay, like, sure, this is a problem with social media in general, right? That's something that a lot of people say, right? Sure, maybe it's just a social media thing. But this, and you've got to remember, these aren't from, what Facebook says a lot of times, right? Is like, oh, these studies came from some outside think tank that's very anti-Facebook, they're anti-social media. These came from Facebook data scientists, people from within Facebook who are already biased for the company. That's where these statistics came from. And they specifically admitted in their reports that these issues, you don't see these issues on Twitter, you don't see these issues on TikTok. These issues are specific to Instagram and how they design their algorithm. We'll be talking more about why that algorithm is that way. You've got to understand, these choices are intentional. They've done this on purpose, and they've refused to change it. They've admitted it themselves. So why are these issues on Facebook's platforms? It's time to talk about the real problem here. Algorithmic effects. We'll be talking about the actual algorithms that Facebook and Instagram use to serve you content that actually decide what you see and how you feel. So there's a big thing to talk about here. Anyone who's studied Facebook or done any sort of ethical research knows in around 2018, Facebook was declining a lot in terms of engagement that they were getting on their platform, mainly on their main Facebook platform. And so Mark was like, yo guys, what are we gonna do about this? And they decided to release a new algorithm to prioritize meaningful social interaction, or MSI. And basically what the algorithm was supposed to do is it was supposed to look at people and it was supposed to look at feeds and it was basically supposed to prioritize homegrown content. So it's supposed to prioritize content that your friends and family share, right? Things that are close to you, so that way you spend more time on the platform. And that's all well and good, right? It seems to have good intentions. But what the end consequence of that, at least what the data scientists saw very quickly, was that what this actually did is it made Facebook an angrier place. Because the content that the friends and family are sharing the most is content that gets them emotional. It's content that makes them feel angry. Content that divides us, that pits us against each other. And well, we've certainly seen the results of that. We're going to talk about some of the places we've seen that. So the first one is QAnon, right? So those of you guys who don't know, QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory that says a whole host of things. That Trump won the election, that leadership of Democratic leadership are pedophiles. I don't know. There's a lot of layers to it. We're not going to get into that right now. It's an incredibly far-right conspiracy theory. We'll say that much. And normally, what happens with these types of conspiracy theories, especially ones that are this extremist, is they fade out. Right? You don't get mainstream buy-in into conspiracy theories like this because they have no basis in reality. Right? That's not the sort of thing that ever happens. No longer, not in this age. So a lot of people discovered QAnon through Facebook groups. And this is particularly important to know. This comes from an internal presentation. Facebook's own research determined that 64% of the time that someone joins an extremist Facebook group, they don't do it because they know about the extremist theory. They don't do it because they're already into QAnon. They don't do it because they're already into this type of stuff. They do it because the Facebook recommendation algorithm told them to, because it suggested it to them, because it made them angry. And do you know what the result of that is? 2 million people, 2 million extra people are now in QAnon because of Facebook, because of this recommendation algorithm they created. 2 million people. I mean, this is what destabilized democracy looks like. It looks like 2 million people joining a group because Facebook told them to. And this problem isn't just in the US. So we talked about how this algorithm makes people angry, right? So there's a big issue with this in other countries like Poland, right? So in Poland, they've increasingly been moving towards more and more extremist politicians with more extremist views on things like abortion, or even on free speech and free press, which is a serious issue. And Facebook has only made this problem worse. So before this algorithm changed, these parties would do, like 50-50 positive negative content, right? Like 50% like, oh, like look at the good stuff our party's doing, right? Like 50%, like screw the other party, they suck, right? Like, or parties, I guess, since they're not that messed up. But okay. With the algorithm change, in order to maintain the same amount of engagement that they had before, they had to switch to 80% negative content, just to maintain the same amount of engagement that they were getting before. All as a function of this algorithm. And Facebook knew this, right? I mean, our last quote was from 2016. This is from 2019. They know this stuff, right? Changed the algorithm in 2018. They found out a year later. This is still a problem. This hasn't gotten fixed. And there's one more thing. One more really big issue. Facebook enabled a genocide. You guys might not know about this, but okay. This study's from the New York Times, from the United Nations. So you can trust this, you can believe this. In Myanmar, Facebook is basically the internet. You guys might not know about this, this is an interesting program. Facebook basically runs this thing called Free Basics. And basically what they do is they go into third world countries where there isn't a lot of internet connectivity, or there aren't a lot of people on pre-existing internet networks because they can't afford data, they can't afford to get on the networks in the first place. And they basically say, hey, for a limited number of websites, including Facebook, we'll basically cover data charges and you can just give people the internet and give it to them for free. Like basically our subset of the internet, which is already a little messed up, right? It's very anti-net neutrality, right? You know, they're basically going in, they're using their money in order to push their product. But okay, sure, let's put that aside. That's fine. We'll say it's fine, please. That's what this free basics program is. So in Myanmar, Facebook is practically the internet. In fact, according to UN reports, people use the word Facebook and the word internet interchangeably, which is kind of a weird concept to us here, right? That's probably not something that anyone here is very familiar with, but that's how it works in this country because of this free basics program, which I mean, I guess that means they accomplished their goal, right? Facebook's there. And in Myanmar, there's also this ethnic minority group called the Rohingya Muslims. Ethnic minority group, and if you know anything about ethnic minority groups, especially with controlling or authoritarian governments, they want to control their country, right? They want to maintain control. They want to show that they have power. And oftentimes, ethnic groups that have their own way of living or don't conform to the religious standard in the country typically don't fare so well. And so the government in Myanmar was like, look, this ethnic minority is causing issues to us. We want to get them out of here. But just saying that and just starting a genocide isn't too popular, right? That's kind of a hard thing to sell on your citizens, even on normal people, right? That's kind of a difficult thing to sell. So what they did is they looked at Facebook and they said, well, this is the internet, and it's customized. And guess what type of content does best on here? Content that's angry, content that divides people. And so they went on Facebook. And this was a major operation, right? Around 700 military officials. And their sole job was to go on Facebook and sow fear and hate. They spread Photoshopped images of this ethnic minority group, hurting ordinary citizens or raiding villages, things that weren't true. But because they were angry, because they were divisive, they spread. They spread far faster than anything else. And so because of that, because Facebook did not take action on this, because hey, people were using their service, right? Over 1 million people have been forced to flee. Over 25,000 people are dead. You might say, okay, wouldn't this have happened anyway? The UN found with the report that Facebook played a determining role in this genocide in Myanmar. A determining role in that it would not have happened if Facebook wasn't there. They enabled this. They let this happen. They killed tens of thousands of people in this country. And they didn't stop it until it was too late. Now you might say, okay, obviously this algorithm is bad. Isn't Facebook doing something about this? I mean, this did come from internal research, right? They know this stuff is happening. Here's the killer. When people told Mark, when the integrity teams went to Mark and they were like, hey, there's an issue here. We have a solution. They said, on the integrity team said, okay, we have a project, we've applied it to civic posts. So posts that government officials made. They said, hey, we're not going to put this angry algorithm on civic-minded posts. They said, okay, this reduces hate. They went to Mark, they're like, hey, can we put this on all of our posts to make Facebook a place where genocides don't happen? And Mark said that he didn't want to pursue it if it reduced user engagement. And of course it would. Of course it would reduce user engagement. So guess what isn't implemented in Facebook right now? This algorithm. The thing about the genocide in Myanmar is that it wasn't government accounts that were doing this, right? It was fake accounts. Fake accounts like fan pages for music stars in Myanmar. Pages like just random parents from random villages. Fake accounts of fake people that this algorithm would never apply to. So hate keeps getting spread, and the genocide kept going. So what do we do about this? I mean, I think we'll talk about this more later. But I think after seeing all of this, I think the key takeaway is that maybe you shouldn't work for companies that do this much harm and aren't actively working on fixing it. But before we get to that, let's zoom out a little bit. Why is Facebook like this? Because this is not a problem just with Facebook, right? And Facebook isn't causing genocide for fun, certainly. They're not hurting people for fun. There's a reason behind this. And it has to do with the internet. A lot of services on the internet now, right? You don't pay for, right? You don't pay a subscription in order to use most services. You don't pay anything. Because the profit model of the modern internet is built on advertising. That doesn't tell us where the money comes from. I think we need to clarify that statement. The profit model of the modern internet is built on selling changes in your behavior. Snickers comes in, let's say Snickers, okay? Snickers comes in, they say, okay, listen, Facebook, we're gonna pay you $100. In exchange for $100, you're gonna put the word Snickers in 1,000 people's heads. And you're gonna subtly change their behavior, so the next time they go to the grocery store, the next time they see candy, there's a slight chance that next time they see it, they're gonna think about Snickers. There's gonna be a slight chance they buy us over for brand. I mean, that's why these big brands that everyone knows about still do advertising. It's not about brand recognition. It's about selling a change in a person's behavior. And that's what the profit model of the internet is built on. Okay, there's not much we can do about that. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the advertising economy is here to stay for a while. But what does this have to do with Facebook? How can Facebook sell more changes in your behavior? Because that's their goal, right? As a for-profit company, they're trying to make money. So how are they going to make money? How are they going to sell more changes in your behavior? Well, they do it by keeping you on the platform for longer, whether it's good for you or not. The more time Facebook can keep you online, the more changes in your behavior they can sell to advertisers. And what's the best way to keep people on Facebook? By breaking them enough to keep them coming back. Whether it's by giving them body image issues, making them suicidal, or by starting a genocide, or by dividing political parties, by breaking democracies in countries. They don't care. And Facebook is an incredibly extreme example of this, right? Because the advertising economy by itself is kind of naive. A lot of websites advertise. Facebook has gotten advertising down to science. They've realized that they can sell more ads by hurting people. That's exactly what they do. No wonder they know about all of this from their internal research. And they are willing to fix it. All right, so now that we know all of this, what do we do about it? Well, I think the first thing, the most important thing, it's actually, let's get a show of hands here. Facebook is part of the FANG. They're a very well-known CS company. I'm not going to judge anyone for applying to work there, but let's get a raise of hands. How many people have applied to Facebook or worked at Facebook? Yeah. I really encourage all of you. I know this is a hard thing to say. I know this is a hard thing to hear. But I really encourage all of you to withdraw your applications. Because you shouldn't work for companies that put money over doing what's right in the world. That put money over people's lives. Hundreds of thousands of people's lives. Lives of people that you know, your friends, have had body image issues because of Instagram. Your friends have had major mental health crises because of Instagram. People have died because of this platform. They're not doing anything about it. So I really encourage you to at least think about it. And beyond that, beyond internships and beyond whatever jobs you about that, if you're designing a system that has potentially addictive components, think about the impacts your decisions can have. So obviously we've talked about social media a lot here, right? So when you're designing something that has any sort of an algorithmic feed that serves content to people in some sort of algorithmic way, you've got to think to yourself, is this addictive? How is it addictive? Is it addictive in a safe way? Are there safeguards built in to save people from themselves And most importantly, am I putting money over people here? Is my service actually providing a service? Or is the algorithm I'm designing actually just there to make more money at any cost? There's also other things that have addictive components, right? Beyond social media, there's gamification of services. And this is a good thing to talk about with Robinhood, right? So Robinhood has a pretty glaring ethical issue in that they let people do pretty much whatever they want. They gamify the trading of stocks, right? Which is good, right? They say at least, hey, it like democratizes stock trading. Okay, that's a fair goal, right? That's cool. But they haven't, a lot of ethical issues that come from that, they haven't properly addressed. For instance, options trading is really risky, right? You can lose millions of dollars and not really know what the hell you're doing, right? Like that's really easy to do on Robinhood because they gamified the trading of stocks. They haven't thought about how a potentially addictive system that they've made can impact the decisions that real people have. People have gone bankrupt because of Robinhood. Plenty of people. Because of this gamification, because they aren't properly training people and getting people ready for a really risky activity. Robinhood is addictive, right? If you've seen anyone start on Robinhood, they're on that app all the time. So if you're designing a system that has addictive components, think before you deploy. All right, that's the social media section. Now we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, obviously, there are plenty of ethical concerns that people have heard about. So we're actually going to start with that first. What have you guys heard in terms of ethical issues in artificial intelligence? Anyone got anything? Yeah, Ben.
They often amplify existing biases. For instance, we have artificial intelligence that are racist or sexist or divided.
Absolutely, yeah, we're going to be talking about that more later. I've always thrown short. It's really depressing. Anyone got anything else? Yeah, Sam.
Deepfakes.
What?
Deepfakes.
Deepfakes, absolutely. We're not going to be talking about that, but that's a really good one. These don't fly as far as I want them to. Yeah.
When making decisions, like for autonomous vehicles, we should be cautious too.
Absolutely. That is a really big one. And we're not going to talk about that one today either, but it's good. Why do they fly so short? What on earth? Okay. Yeah, Sam. What? Okay. That's a really good one. Sam and I were talking about this earlier. Because models that generate language like GPT-3 have no idea what, like the meaning of what they're actually saying, they can say anything and they're very good at lying, right? And at that point, they're dangerous. We are going to be talking about how AI is dangerous, but in a slightly different way. So we're first going to talk about how AI isn't perfect, right? And I mean, anyone in computer science who's worked with artificial intelligence models knows this, right? AI models aren't perfect, but a lot of times, especially in the real world, outside of the computer science researchy world, we treat them like they're perfect. And it's about time we stop that. So we're going to be talking about a specific model here today. It's called ShotSpotter. So in case you guys haven't heard of ShotSpotter, it's only prevalent in a couple of major communities. So if you don't live in them, you probably don't know what it is. ShotSpotter is basically this artificial intelligence that's used to detect gunshots in places with high gun violence. So especially like inner city situations where like there's a lot of gunfire, what they'll do is they'll set up these directional microphones on the top of like traffic lights or antennas or what have you. They'll set these up and then they'll run them through this proprietary AI model that they have that is supposed to be able to detect gunshots and tell you exactly where they came from. Okay, that seems pretty cool. There's a really big issue with ShotSpotter, which is that it's not always perfect. I'd like to tell you about the story of Michael Williams. So Michael Williams was this guy. He was just driving along and he was driving by an intersection. There happened to be, I think it was an armed robbery or something like that. There was some sort of felony happening at that intersection. And okay, he didn't notice it. He was just going about his day. So he kept driving. And it turns out that there was ShotSpotter in that area. And ShotSpotter was like, hey, check out that guy in that car. He's the one who did the thing. He's the one who did the crime. And it turned out it was Michael Williams in that car. And so the police came there, they pulled the ShotSpotter data, they were like, okay, we're gonna get this guy. And so they went, they grabbed Michael Williams, and he spent over a year in jail for a crime that he did not commit, where the only evidence was from a proprietary AI algorithm. And of course, this AI algorithm is not perfect. Prosecutors said that he shot and killed him. And of course, he didn't. We now know. And an Associated Press investigation found that the ShotSpotter system can miss live gunfire right underneath its microphones. And it can mistake it with sounds of fireworks or cars backfiring, which of course you're gonna hear those at intersections, right? Of course you are. Now imagine your car backfires and then some police officers show up at your door and say that you killed a guy. That's what this AI does. And it would be fine as an algorithm by itself, something that helps police get to the scene of the crime and figure out what's going on. But that's not what's happening here. People are using ShotSpotter to put people in jail as the sole evidence in a trial. If an algorithm has the power to put someone in prison for life, and it's sometimes wrong, it shouldn't be used. And there's a really big issue here, right? Because as CS people, I think we understand this. We understand that AI isn't always perfect. We understand these issues, right? It makes sense that a gunshot might be confused with a car backfire. But here's the issue. The people at ShotSpotter's marketing team say that ShotSpotter has a 100% accuracy rate, which is literally impossible. It's an AI algorithm. You can't have 100% accuracy. That's not a thing that exists. And it obviously isn't, because this guy got thrown in jail for a year. And he was innocent. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. But it's important to treat these types of AI algorithms as followable. Because if we don't, we start making really bad decisions with them. These technologies are also dangerous. They have the power to really harm our society. And I know that's not necessarily a popular take, especially at CS Hackathon, but it's something that's important to talk about, because they are, and they've already caused a lot of harm. Let's talk about Clearview. Who here knows what Clearview is? Who here has heard of Clearview? It was in the news a lot. Yeah, it was in the news a lot a year ago. I'll be asking about it in a bit, but basically, for those of you guys who don't know, Clearview is this artificially intelligent system that is for face recognition. And what you can do is you can take a picture of a person, you can put it into Clearview, and it will find every other picture of you that has ever existed on the internet. Every single one. And it's deadly accurate. You give it one picture of your face and find every other picture of you, along with everything that's associated with that. So if it was on Instagram, they know who you are. As a geotag, they know where you live. They know the people you know. They know everything. Because they have this database of literally every image that has ever shown up on the internet. So, there's one last thing here. This software isn't used for computer science research. It isn't used in any normal field. It's used by police departments and militaries around the world. So what ethical issues could come from this? Let's hear it. Anyone got any ideas? I got candy. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Woo! All right, okay, anyone else? I mean, that is the main one. Anyone else see any other ethical issues with this program? Okay, we'll keep it at there for now, right? So really the fundamental issue here, right, is it can show anything, and it's sold to governments and militaries. And this really, what we really need to talk about here is facial recognition in general, right? Facial recognition is a dangerous technology, and giving it to governments should terrify you because it is really powerful. Do you realize how easy it is to run a genocide with Clearview? I don't know if you guys have thought about this, right? Before, when the Nazis were running their genocide, what they would do is they would go to these central governments and they would say, hey, give me a list of all of the Jewish people in your country. Okay, and these countries would have to turn it over, and then they'd have a full list. Like that's how they were able to get away with the stuff in the first place, right? They had these lists. Right now in the United States, those lists are illegal. You don't need those lists anymore. You can literally just mount a camera outside of a church, and you know every single person that goes to that church. Like that. That's what Clearview lets a person do. That's what Clearview lets a government do. And Clearview isn't just selling to governments that are in the clear. They're selling to a lot of problematic countries as well. You know what we haven't banned? Haven't banned them yet. You can also target minorities. You can target neighborhoods and target entire groups of people. Or we're selling these to police forces. Let's say there's some sort of abusive person in a police force. I don't think that's smart to believe. How are they going to find the next victim? Look at how easy it is now. Just mount a camera. It's incredibly terrifying. And this type of technology ought to be illegal for governments and militaries and police forces to use, because it sets an incredibly dangerous precedent for them to be able to do this type of mass surveillance and mass identification of people. It goes against our rights of due process, and it sets a really bad precedent. Finally, let's talk about discrimination, right? So I think everyone has heard the general thing of like, oh, like facial recognition softwares or like artificial intelligences, they're bad at, seeing, especially like identifying minority faces, right? And where a lot of that comes from, right, is that a lot of people who design these models, like it or not, are young and white and male. And because of that, a lot of these artificial intelligences are biased towards those faces because those are the things that it's seen the most. So it's best at differentiating features on those types of faces, and it's much worse at especially black women. It's especially bad at detecting those faces and differentiating between. That's a really big problem, right? So that sort of thing goes one way. But there's a much more troubling side of this discrimination that we don't often talk about. And that's when AI amplifies already racist trends. So we need to talk about how AI works, right? So really, like, how does AI work, right? AI is really stupid, we know this, right? You put in training examples, it learns from training examples, and then it amplifies, whatever it's seen, it generalizes, and it uses those generalizations in order to make decisions, okay? So that's how AI works. Now let's say that you're using AI in order to hire people, or you're using AI in order to predict crime. We know that a lot of criminal arrest records have discrimination in them. They have racist tendencies because of the racist tendencies of people. We know this. We've seen this a lot, especially in historical police records, even today. Right? We know this is a problem. So when we take an AI and we say, hey, we want you to learn what crime looks like in this community, and you feed it a bunch of racist arrest data, guess what? The AI is going to amplify those already existing racist trends because the AI, again, doesn't know. The AI isn't logical. The AI doesn't know right from wrong. All the AI knows is the training examples that you've shown it. So when it sees that there's a certain race that seems to be committing more crimes, the AI is going to be like, hey, if they're of this minority group, guess what? They're criminals. They're more likely to be criminal because of course that's what it's going to do. And a person, you can send a person to bias training. You can send a person to, you can try to understand criminal trends and adjust. You can adjust policing patterns. But guess what? That doesn't change the historical data you're training on, and you can't send an AI to anti-bias training. So you've got this black box algorithm that you can't look inside, that you don't understand. You don't know what it's doing. You don't know what it's making decisions based off of. It's just going to amplify discrimination that already exists in your data set. And guess what? These types of programs do exist. There's actually a predictive policing program in Florida that's particularly nefarious. What they do is they use these types of proprietary AI algorithms in order to try to identify criminals before they've even committed crimes. It tries to figure out who criminals might be in a community using AI. And then they send police officers to harass them out of the neighborhood. That's evil. It's sinister. People who haven't even been convicted of crimes getting harassed by an AI system that thinks they might. That's dystopian. And it shouldn't be okay. So, what do we do about this? Talk about artificial intelligence. I think the first thing, right, we talked about ShotSpotter marketing, saying that they have a 100% accuracy rate. this is the type of thing that people in CS need to get in front of. Normal people see AI, and they think of an infallible computer that can do no wrong, right? They think of these AIs in movies and in books that are perfect, that help the human, that know everything. That AI doesn't exist, guys. I mean, we know that, right? But they don't. So when you're creating these types of artificial intelligence models, tell your marketing team, tell the people you're working with, hey, this thing isn't what you think it is. It's fallible, and it needs to be checked by humans, and there need to be safeguards in place for this thing's use. That's incredibly important. Second of all, just don't use AI when people's lives are on the line. I think this one's very basic. Don't use AI when hiring people, right? We see hire views all the time. I think hire views are terrible. That's so disgusting, right? You're using an AI, you're using people's facial expressions and gestures in order to figure out whether they're a good person to hire. You're inviting discrimination, you're inviting racism. Don't use AI to fire people. Look at you, Amazon. Don't do that stuff. That's really disturbing. Just because your workforce is massive doesn't mean you can get away with stuff like that. And don't use AI when there's real people's lives, when you're convicting people, when you're putting people in jail. That's not a place where AI can be used, especially not now.
I would also like to add that in terms of this is the reason why diversity in computer science and in artificial intelligence, software engineering is so important, because we are making decisions that directly impact all aspects of society, and all aspects of society are not necessarily represented within the world of computer science. So those that actually make code, you might think like, oh, I'm just writing like this web application, but you're making it, and you're making it from your perspective and not considering those others. And that's why a lot of people have certain preconditions, and we all come from different backgrounds, and all these things directly contribute to the things we make.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, if the models you're making have the potential to do harm, whether that's an algorithm that creates a news feed, or an algorithm that convicts people, or an algorithm that decides whether someone's hired or fired, or even an algorithm that recommends breakfast. If the models you're making have the potential to change people's lives, think about what you're doing before you launch. Think about what your algorithm does, and make sure that you have safeguards in place to protect the people that are using your algorithm, so that way your AI doesn't get too far off track. Okay, final part. Let's talk about personal responsibility. So we've talked a lot about problems and ethical issues in computer science, right? So now, time to talk about you guys. What do you actually do? The first, and I think most important thing, is to come up with ethical restrictions for yourself. Talked about not working for Facebook before, sure. But let's talk more broadly. There are a lot of companies that do bad things, right? There's defense contractors, there's people who make AI algorithms in order to decide whether people should get deported. These companies exist. And you should come up with some broad ethical restrictions for yourself that say, I'm not willing to do this type of work, or I'm not willing to work for this type of company. I have a contract, I have an ethical guide that I have with myself. I carry it around with me everywhere I go. That has certain ethical restrictions that I have for myself, for my life. What jobs will I take? What things won't I do? Because that's really important to me. It's important to me that I know what I stand for. Because in the end, that's what matters, right? It doesn't matter if you get paid more. It doesn't matter if you work for a slightly better CS firm. What matters is that you stay true to who you are, what you believe. So think to yourself, what sorts of organizations will you refuse to work for? What sorts of things will you refuse to do? You shouldn't sell your soul out to a company just because they're paying you a little extra money. All right, moving on from that. This might catch me a little bit of flack from CS people, but there's a big thing in the CS community, right, about free and open source software. I think free and open source software is really important. Of course it is, right? Our communities would not be even close to where they are today without the open source model. It's so important. But there are a lot of potentially dangerous algorithms right there. And by licensing your software differently, you have the power to say, hey, your organization isn't good, and I don't want you using my software. And here, I want to talk about this guy named Joseph Lane. So Joseph Redman is this incredible AI researcher. If you've done any work in object detection, you definitely know this guy. You've used his work. He's the creator of the YOLO network, the You Only Look Once single shot object detection neural network. He's incredibly famous. He's a UW grad student. This guy made the gold standard in object detection networks. Absolutely incredible guy. And after creating version 3 of his network, he was out with some researchers. And there was a military official, I don't know, at a conference or something that he was at. And they said to him, man, I can't wait until we can put this object detection technology on some of our military drones. And Redmond said, yo, what the fuck? And now, he doesn't do object detection anymore. He's thrown away his entire career and all of his work because of what he believes in. This man is incredible. He decided that this work that he's doing isn't providing the benefit to society that he thought it was. That's a really powerful thing. That's something that I hope that each and every one of you will have the power to do one day if you need to. To say, listen, my technology isn't getting used for good anymore. And the work I do on it now isn't going towards anywhere good. Now, all of his work was free and open source. And that's what makes it so difficult to license and control, right? Because it's out there and anyone can use it. You can license your software differently. And I'd like to tell you about a license that I've used in the past called the Do No Harm license. Let's see if I can use this computer. All right, let's go. So the Do No Harm license is basically a license that makes software free and open source for companies, for your average company, right? So let's say that you create a startup or you want to do something. You can say, okay, normal people can use this. But a company that derives the majority of its income from actions that support or contribute to tobacco, slavery, sex trafficking, war crimes, weapons manufacturing, addictive behaviors, violence, hate speech. Companies that profit off of those things can't use this software. It's very simple. A lot of computer scientists don't know that they have the right to do this. They say, oh yeah, you just slap an MIT license on, you call it good. You can license your software. You can use this type of license on your software and say, hey, this software, as naive as it seems, I don't want a company like Facebook or a company like Raytheon to be using my technology. It's a completely valid thing to say. And you can say that in a license. So that's an option that a lot of people have that I think they don't know that they have. I think it's really powerful and it's something that people should consider. So licensing is an incredibly powerful avenue that computer scientists have in order to control the things that they create, whether they have the potential to do harm or not. And finally, and most importantly, consider the broader societal implications of the things you do. When you're creating a newsfeed, or you're creating an algorithm, or you're applying to CS jobs, or you're creating the next new technology, think to yourself, what are the implications of the algorithm I'm creating? What are the implications of the code I'm writing? What could this potentially do? Is it going to create more good in the world? Or is it going to create more discord and hate, strife? Am I doing this to make money? Or is it actually going to create something good? And am I putting people's lives below, or am I putting money over doing what's right over other people's lives? So, as Jerry Roth might say, think before you code and consider what you're writing and what you're doing and everything you do. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much. If you guys have any more questions, I'll take them for the next couple minutes. But other than that, have a nice day. There's another workshop starting here soon.